And the word of the Lord came to Jonah the second time. This is the third chapter of the book of Jonah. And he says to Jonah, he says, I want you to go preach to this great city, Nineveh, and preach what I tell you to preach. So I've read this several times, but as I was going about my daily activities, I was trying to recall in my mind exactly how was it that God described the city of Nineveh. And so when I got back to where I could look at my Bible, and I saw, he says, he describes it as being this great city. And I thought, now, what is the implication here? Well, I'm thinking that he's just talking about the commerce of the city, the activities of the city, and also the fact that it was a very large city. It was 64 miles around. It was 18 miles long and 14 miles wide, and there was 120,000 people who lived in the city of Nineveh. And God has now told this somewhat reluctant prophet to go and preach and proclaim that in 40 days, this city is going to fall. Now, here's some interesting things about this. Just as I'm looking at it and viewing it, the truth of the matter is that God didn't have to send Jonah to the city of Nineveh. There was something going on in that city that God was highly displeased with, and it had passed the threshold of what God would consider to be tolerable. And he could have just destroyed it. He could have just rained fire down from heaven or sent an earthquake or did whatever God wanted to do to just wipe the city out. But he chose not to. And instead, he chose to send this prophet, this preacher named Jonah, to go into this city and proclaim mercy. And I think this is just a fascinating thing to think about. The glorious, tremendous mercy of God. And keeping in mind what the Apostle Paul told us in the book of Romans, chapter 10, verse 17, it says, faith cometh by hearing the word of God. So God allowed the prophet to go and preach that the word of God would come forth, because it says by faith comes by hearing the word of God. Well, I want to tell you something. This really excites me because I'm a preacher of the word of God. I preach to my congregation at Freedom Road, and I preach across these airwaves all across the world. I don't know who all it's reaching. I get emails from people all over the world, but it's just a fraction of the numbers of people who are listening. But nevertheless, God's using me, just a simple preacher, to proclaim His word of faith and hope and mercy. This is Pastor Jack King with the gospel on the radio broadcast.